Even now, 20 years after his death, the name Saddam Hussein is known around the world. He was an orphan who rose to become one of the most powerful leaders of his time. To understand his story, we must first understand his country, Iraq. Iraq is a land deeply tied to the history of Islam. It's the birthplace of great prophets like Abraham, Lot, and Jonah. Peace be upon them all. Yet, at one point, people there had strayed from the path, even worshipping fire. After the Prophet, peace be upon him, the first Caliph Abu Bakr sent his general Khalid ibn al-Walid to bring Iraq under Muslim rule. For centuries, it remained a core part of the Islamic world. But about a century ago, during World War I, the British Empire seized Iraq from the Ottoman Caliphate. They installed a puppet king, just as they did across the Arab world, planting rulers who would serve their interests. Many of those dynasties still rule today, but in Iraq, the imposed king failed. The country spiraled into chaos, with leaders changing one after another. It was in this turbulent era that an orphan was born in a small Iraqi village. Saddam Hussein. Some call him a hero, others a cruel dictator. His father died before he was born, and his grieving mother even considered taking her own life. As a child, Saddam was bullied. But stories say he never backed down. From a young age, he carried a steel rod and fought back against anyone who bothered him, a boy who learned not to be afraid. When his mother remarried, his stepfather was abusive. At just 10 years old, Saddam ran away to live with his uncle, a member of the Ba'ath Party. At the time, it was a tiny political group, with only a few hundred members. But they saw something in Saddam. He was young, but exceptionally bold and fearless. So, when the party needed someone for a dangerous mission, reportedly with CIA backing, to eliminate Iraq's prime minister, they chose the 24-year-old Saddam. His team opened fire on the Prime Minister's convoy. The attack failed, but it got Saddam noticed by powerful people. He fled to Egypt, but the CIA reportedly began grooming him as a future leader for Iraq. When the Baathists eventually seized power, Saddam returned. By the time he was 30, he was the second most powerful man in the country. Iraq was independent on paper, but its real wealth, its oil and gas, was still controlled by foreign powers. Saddam's first major act was to change that. He nationalized Iraq's oil, taking back control of its resources. With that newfound wealth, he launched ambitious projects to modernize Iraq. Electricity reached remote villages, schools and hospitals were built and made free for everyone. For a while, the Iraqi dinar grew strong, and Saddam tightened his grip on the military, building a powerful and loyal force. He even took cues from Hollywood. He was a huge fan of the movie The Godfather and began to model his image on its main character, the clothes, the mannerisms, even the cigars. It was all part of crafting a persona of an imposing, untouchable leader. Soon, he was more powerful than the president himself. Eventually, he forced the president to quietly resign, and Saddam took complete control. Just 6 days later, he called a meeting of the Ba'ath Party. In a chilling display of power, he announced there was a conspiracy against him right there in the room. He read out a list of 68 names. Many were taken away and never seen again. This single event cemented his rule through fear. Then came his first major mistake, Iran. In 1979, the region was shaken. Saddam took power in Iraq, and in neighboring Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini led the Islamic Revolution. Khomeini's revolutionary message resonated with Shia Muslims everywhere, including the Shia majority in Iraq. Saddam, a Sunni leader, saw this as a direct threat to his rule. So, within a year, with backing from the United States and some Arab monarchies, Saddam launched a full-scale invasion of Iran. What followed was a brutal 8-year war. Hundreds of thousands died on both sides. The conflict had united Iran, and Khomeini refused any peace deal that didn't include Saddam's removal. The war drained Iraq's economy. Saddam had to borrow billions from neighboring Gulf states. He dealt with dissent ruthlessly. When his own health minister suggested he should step down to end the war, Saddam had him executed. He even used chemical weapons against his opponents. The war ended in a stalemate, leaving both nations devastated, while arms dealers around the world profited. After the war, Saddam's troubles weren't over. He was deeply in debt to Kuwait, which then deliberately drove down oil prices, crippling Iraq's attempts to rebuild. Enraged, Saddam accused Kuwait of economic warfare. In August 1990, he gave the order to invade. Iraqi forces quickly overran Kuwait. The world was shocked by reports of brutality. This single act turned Saddam from a regional power player into an international outcast. Before the invasion, Saddam believed he had received a green light from the US ambassador, but it was a deceptive signal. The United States used the invasion as the perfect reason to establish a massive military presence in the Middle East, convincing Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states to host American bases. A massive US-led coalition was formed. In early 1991, they launched an offensive that swiftly liberated Kuwait. During the war, Saddam fired missiles at Israel, hoping to draw it into the conflict and rally the Arab world to his side. But the move backfired. It convinced global powers that Saddam was a threat who had to be contained. Throughout the 1990s, Iraq was crushed by severe UN sanctions. The economy collapsed, and the Iraqi people suffered immensely. To hold onto power, Saddam began to wrap himself in the cloak of religion. He made Quranic studies mandatory, banned alcohol, and even added the words Allahu Akbar, God is greatest to the Iraqi flag. But it was too little, too late. The nation was impoverished. A major turning point came when two of his own high-ranking generals defected. They publicly denounced him and claimed Iraq was secretly hiding weapons of mass destruction. This claim, though never proven by UN inspectors, became the justification for war. In 2003, despite the largest anti-war protests in human history with millions marching in cities across the globe, the US moved forward. They gave Saddam an ultimatum: leave Iraq or face an invasion. He refused. The US-led invasion began, and within weeks, Saddam's regime crumbled. Saddam and his sons went into hiding. Bounties were placed on their heads. His sons were eventually betrayed and cornered in a house. They fought to the end, with reports saying even Saddam's young grandson, Mustafa, was firing at US troops before being killed. Saddam himself was found months later, hiding in a hole in the ground near his hometown. The powerful ruler of lavish palaces was now a disheveled prisoner. He was put on trial by an Iraqi tribunal. Throughout the trial, he was defiant, shouting at the judges, calling them puppets, and refusing to recognize the court's authority. For some, this defiance restored his image as a symbol of resistance. In 2006, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. He rejected any pleas for mercy and used his final moments to condemn the US and Israel, chanting support for Muslims and Palestinians. He asked to be executed by firing squad, like a soldier, but his request was denied. He was hanged. The US had hoped that removing Saddam would bring stability to Iraq. The reality was the opposite. The occupation was plagued by mistakes. The decision to disband the entire Iraqi army left hundreds of thousands of trained soldiers jobless and angry, fueling a violent insurgency. Sectarian conflict between Sunnis and Shias exploded. Anti-American sentiments soared. When President George W. Bush visited Baghdad, an Iraqi journalist threw his shoes at him, the ultimate sign of disrespect. After Saddam's execution, other Arab leaders were shaken. At a summit, Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi held up a photo of Saddam's hanging. He warned his fellow rulers that if they didn't stand up to American policy, the same fate could await them all. A few years later, Gaddafi himself was overthrown and killed. The story of Saddam Hussein is a complex and tragic chapter of modern history. It serves as a stark reminder of how the pursuit of power, foreign intervention, and brutal wars can shatter a nation, leaving behind a legacy of chaos and suffering that endures for generations. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into history. We'll see you in the next one.